say his name 3 times, and boy, are you in for a wild ride. Tim Burton's 1988 cult classic, Beetlejuice, has become so culturally significant that it has brought about its own TV show, a Broadway musical, and a sequel 36 years later. But what about this seemingly kind of odd movie has captivated its audience for so long? Welcome to Easily Entertained. My name is Bryson Olson, and here we talk about all the good things about entertainment. It's a great time. Today we are, of course, talking about Beetlejuice, and with the release of the sequel, of which I haven't seen yet, I want to, but I haven't seen it yet, I thought we would take a little bit of a dive into what made the original so much fun.
Handbook for the recently diseased.
Deceased.
Death has always kind of been a taboo topic within movies. While death would be in them, it wasn't absent. People would die. It was also monsterized, like in Night of the Living Dead or The Exorcist, and kind of seen in like a negative light. It was kind of a bad thing. Even when people would die, no one would really talk about it. It was just kind of like a forbidden topic. Beetlejuice sort of flipped that concept around. While not glorifying death, it managed to paint it in a bit more of a positive light. That isn't just, oh, you get punished for doing something, or you go to heaven, or you become a demon, whatever. Instead, the dead just kind of get to hang out in the house that they were living in, which I don't see as a hugely bad thing. And they don't love that they have to share their space with the living when someone new moves in, but overall they aren't fully upset that they are dead, which I kind of like. It covers how death is a lot more personal, which I think is a great mindset to go about it. Whether you're religious or not, you can kind of respect the idea that death is not a super concrete thing, and anything after it's a lot more based on the person. Just like how death is usually a lot more specific to a person, it's just a lot more personal. It doesn't have to be something that's feared, but it's more something that you can just be at peace with, and I like that. Sure, some things can go like a little bit out of hand when like they mess with other entities, like kind of a demon who just is a little bit crazy, but it is overall a pretty individual, interesting experience. And in Beetlejuice, you also see the more lightheartedness with the living characters as they interact with the dead or learn more about it. The story kind of starts off being more trying to like frighten the living, which is not like a terrible idea, but they don't really care. They are more interested, or they're just kind of neutral about living in a haunted house. It's more like, how do we capitalize on this when they're interested, but still their perception of the dead isn't really a bad one. Beetlejuice kind of makes it a little bit bad, but it doesn't stay bad for very long. It is still mostly a positive interaction with the dead, which I think is good. Lydia, especially in typical goth fashion, is interested in death just because she feels isolated, and the people that she's around aren't really great. They don't really talk to her all that much, or like they're her parents, but they're kind of like, well, I'm doing my own thing, you're just my child that I have to take care of, which is not a great mindset. So the people she's truly able to connect with are those that aren't even living. She later even wants to join them in the afterlife because of this. It just sounds, like a not terrible place. It sounds pretty decent, kind of blurring that line a little bit, but they advise that's not a really great idea. But I do love that the line between life and death in this movie is talked about, because it was not talked about for a lot of movies or just in really public settings before this movie. I feel like it kind of got people comfortable with the idea, and it gave a bit of a healthier perception of the concept of death.
I myself am strange and unusual.
Now, since I mentioned Lydia, I want to kind of dive into how this movie utilizes the goth aesthetic and was kind of a pioneer for that subculture. Specifically during this time, the emergence of goth subculture was kind of at its like peak high point. Like gothic things existed prior to this movie and to this time period, but we started seeing it re-emerge during this time. And kind of like the death concept, it got people more comfortable with the idea of goth people as a whole, as goth culture focused on kind of a darker aesthetic with influences in, you know, punk rock or 19th century gothic fiction, things that were just kind of a darker medium, kind of like death, how Lydia is obsessed with. It would kind of put people off when seeing those kind of people around, and it just left a bad taste in their mouth. And it was just because they didn't understand it. Just like death, you know? Well, it tends to also kind of focus more on the darker topics, like an interest in death or the otherworldly. The goth subculture is also just an interest like any other. It was more about being yourself and just liking what you like, even if others don't. If that's dark colors, harder music, deeper fiction, that's just something you're interested in. They were made, someone should enjoy them. And I think that would just kind of freak people out a little bit. And movies, I think, are incredibly significant in this way, as they can dive into a topic such as this and shed a little bit more light on it. Beetlejuice was one such movie that, with the help of Winona Ryder, who essentially became the goth it girl from there on, showed that the goth subculture was not as really unnerving as people would have thought. It was not as bad as it was kind of made to seem. And it highlights it, especially through Lydia with her obsession of death and the isolation she feels with her family and kind of her rebelliousness. This character got the more general public comfortable with goth. They had a mainstream character who was now part of this culture, and they could connect with her. She wasn't a bad person. She just had her own interests, and usually it was because of isolation or the feeling of being an outcast. And because of that, that's kind of how it personifies as itself, because that's kind of what goth has typically connected the most with. But she still has her times where she's, you know, happy and giddy, you know, kind of at the end when she sort of feels like she has some parental figures. That is great. And then it served as well as a role model for anyone who also felt a connection with that culture. Everyone kind of needs a role model, whether it's, you know, just a standard person who likes to read, or someone who is goth, or someone who likes to invent things, or whatever. You want a good role model for something, and I feel like this movie kind of pioneered that, so that they could have a good role model that wasn't just, ooh, we're all dark and moody for no real reason, but rather giving a reason for it. And, you know, for the people that found that role model, it gave them comfort, and it didn't make them feel like complete outcasts, and rather they could find solace within this group.
Come on, don't go yet. Hey, guy, come on. We're simpatico here. Look at us. Huh, we even shop at the same store.
Now, to talk about the man himself, with a name so nice, you can say it thrice. Beetle.
Nobody says the B word. Come on.
Played amazingly by the legend that is Michael Keaton. Amazing actor. This character is one that really just chews up the screen anytime he is on it. He's just played in such a delightfully chaotic way that you can't help but love him even more, even if he's just a little bit bizarre. So the reason this character has kind of become so beloved that it warranted a sequel 36 years later, I'm kind of surprised it took him this long. Like, yeah, they had a TV show and they had a musical, but I was surprised they didn't have a direct sequel yet, is that just everyone else in this movie is essentially the straight man. The person that's usually pretty logical and just, you know, thinks pretty normal. But Beetlejuice is obviously not. He's the funny man, and he's the guy providing all the energy. In real life, usually, you know, energy is kind of divided amongst a group. Everyone's kind of providing a little bit, and that's not to say that this movie doesn't show that. Like, everyone is still kind of providing their own funny energy, but giving one character so much energy all by himself, that draws attention. Every joke, every dirty thought, or every chaotic action is so much more impactful because he is the only one that's really doing it and is focused on that side of things. This energy is felt by us as the audience just watching, but it's also felt by the characters. Even if they don't really like Beetlejuice as a person, you know, he's kind of crazy, he's not a very great guy, he's just doing crazy shenanigans, he has kind of a gravity to him, and they just can't escape from it. They're always pulled back towards him, and as a result, this movie also kind of has a gravity to it that throughout the years has resulted in it being so iconic to its audience and its influences on pop culture and people in general. It warranted a sequel movie. It got a TV show, which I didn't actually know until a lot more recently, and a Broadway musical. I did know about that, and some of the music on it, slaps. I wish I could play it without getting copyrighted, but that's okay. While some franchises do those kind of things typically for the sole purpose of making money, which Beetlejuice is not necessarily an exception for, because it is definitely making money, so it's clear why they're going to keep doing it. The difference between Beetlejuice and other movies is the energy that it does provide, because we all feel something when we see the character on screen. Whether we just want to see his quirky personality, see him get outsmarted, see the chaos that he gets into, or just enjoy the story that surrounds Beetlejuice as a person, that is what has made it so impactful and is what has drawn everybody to it. Beetlejuice is a movie with energy and excitement while also still providing something with some substance. It is not just, oh, it's going to be a fun action movie, or it's only, oh, this is a crazy drama. It is something that dives a little bit deeper and fits outside of the typical norms, and kind of like how its topics do, they don't fit within the general consensus of everything. It takes some experimenting. It does some things more experimental. I know what I'm saying. And you can just always find something to enjoy about this movie. And that, I think, is what has made Beetlejuice such a cultural phenomenon. So now let's talk about my rating of Beetlejuice. If you don't know our easily entertained rating scale from least to best, it is garbage, once is fine, right mood, excuse me, quotable, go to, and all day, every day. And I would have to put Beetlejuice probably at an all day, every day. I just love the story it tells. I love the characters. I think they're all brilliantly well acted. The practical effects, and we all know how I love the practical effects, they are fantastic in this movie. It really is just that Tim Burton charm that we all love from all of his movies, and I think it's what kind of keeps this one held up to such a good standard throughout the years. Like, there are some moments, you know, like when they are on Jupiter and they see the sandworm and it's like very clear, some kind of wacky green screen. For the most part, it is pretty good and everything kind of holds up, which I think puts Beetlejuice at that all day, every day rating. If you have a different rating, let us know down in the comments. And speaking of comments, we have our question of the week. This is designed to just get you interested in the conversation, you know, participate, give your 2 cents if you feel like it. And this question of the week is, what is your favorite Tim Burton movie? For me, kind of had to go through it because a lot of movies kind of get tossed around with his name, so it's not always sure how much he was involved. But my favorite is definitely Corpse Bride. I love the stop motion animations that especially kind of fall within the Tim Burton sort of aesthetic, even if they're not Tim Burton. Corpse Bride is Tim Burton though, and I think it just tells a really fun story, and it has the cool stop motion animation and great voice acting, and everything about it I think is just wonderful. And most likely I'll probably do an episode on it one of these days. But let us know, what is your favorite Tim Burton movie? And that is it for this episode of Easily Entertained. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, give us a like and a follow. Comment if you have any suggestions on other movies or TV shows or other entertainment things that you would like us to talk about. It would be great. I would be happy to dive into some things that you are also interested in. And that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, stick around till next time. Bye.